Welcome back. Today on The Explainer, we are going to do a forensic breakdown of how one of history's absolute wealthiest superpowers just disintegrated. We're diving deep into the spectacular rise, the deep internal rot, and the tragic ruin of the Mali Empire. We've got so much ground to cover, and honestly, the history here is just fascinating. Let's jump right in. 18 tons. And no, that's not 18 pounds or 18 individual coins. We are talking about the estimated tons of gold that the Mali Emperor Mansa Musa just gave away during his famous 1324 pilgrimage to Mecca. 18 tons. I really want to use this staggering number to right away establish the sheer, almost incomprehensible scale of Mali's wealth during its zenith. I mean, they weren't just rich, they were literally the economic center of gravity for the medieval world. To really put that into perspective, listen to what the Egyptian historian al-Makrizi had to say. Mansa Musa's spending during his stopover in Egypt was so astronomical that it literally crashed the gold market in Cairo. He handed out so much gold to the poor, to local rulers, and in the markets that the value of the precious metal completely plummeted, and it didn't fully recover for over a decade. That right there proves beyond a doubt that Mali was an absolute economic titan. Okay, so let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. First, Mansa Musa's golden age, then the trans-Saharan trade engine. After that, we'll look at internal crises and weak leadership, followed by external invasions and rival powers, and wrap up with gunpowder and the final collapse. Starting off with Section 1, Mansa Musa's golden age and the peak of imperial wealth. So before we can really grasp how this massive empire fell apart, we have to understand the incredibly high baseline from which it fell. Right? During his reign from 1312 to 1337, Mansa Musa consolidated power in a way that commanded unparalleled global prestige. He annexed 24 cities, bringing crucial booming hubs like Gao and Timbuktu under Malian control. He commissioned these architectural marvels, actually bringing in an Andalusian architect to build the famous Jingu Raber Mosque out of baked bricks. And his court? It was a total spectacle. Imagine sitting on a massive ebony throne flanked by elephant tusks, shaded by a silk parasol topped with a golden falcon. And just think about the sheer logistical nightmare of his Hajj. He was accompanied by a caravan of 60,000 people, soldiers, officials, merchants, and thousands of camels just loaded with gold dust. Incredible. Moving right along to Section 2, the trans-Saharan trade engine, fueling the empire. You might be wondering, how did they actually pay for all of this? Well, let's look at the economic machinery that made Musa's golden age even possible. It's super easy to just think, oh, Mali equals gold, but what's really interesting is that their economy was incredibly diverse. Sure, they had the massively productive gold fields of Bambouk and Bure, but they also controlled the vital salt mines of Tahaza up in the north. And remember, back then, salt was often exchanged at par value with gold, literally an ounce of salt for an ounce of gold. They also traded heavily in copper, ivory, and agricultural surplus. But the biggest key here, they taxed the massive trans-Saharan caravan routes. Every single good coming into or going out of the empire was taxed, which generated this massive, steady stream of revenue. Now, to keep this massive, sprawling engine running, the empire relied on what were known as the Farba. These were provincial governors appointed directly by the Mansa himself, and they combined military command with civil authority to aggressively enforce all that taxation in gold, salt, and produce. This administrative structure was honestly brilliant for managing a domain that stretched across 1 million square kilometers. But it comes with a pretty big implicit warning. This whole system relied entirely on the continued loyalty of these Farbas to a strong central king. Which brings us to Section 3, internal crises and weak leadership. The rot begins. So this internal rot built up really quickly. When Mansa Musa died in 1337, the succession was just complete chaos. He was succeeded by his son Maga, who was, frankly, incredibly weak. Skip ahead a little bit, and by 1360, you've got a ruler named Kabisa holding the throne for a mere 9 months before being violently deposed. Then comes Marijada II in 1362, basically a tyrant who abused his subjects, plundered the national treasury, and completely plunged the economy into ruin. By the time Musa II inherited the throne in 1373, he was a king in name only, totally controlled by his ambitious counselors. Because the empire lacked a strict, institutionalized system for who gets to rule next, it just immediately led to bloody civil wars and deep instability. And this marks a tragic shift in power. If you look at the earlier absolute monarchs like Mansa Musa, they had centralized, unquestioned authority. They commanded these massive, totally loyal professional armies of up to 100,000 men. But fast forward to the later 14th century, and you've got these puppet kings like Musa II. They were kept in seclusion, basically locked away by non-royal counselors, like a guy named Mari Jada III, who just took all the real power for himself. The central authority decentralized rapidly. And those provincial governors we talked about earlier, yeah, they started rebelling and just keeping all those massive tax revenues for themselves.
Now for Section 4, External Invasions and Rival Powers. The Empire Fractures.
As you can probably guess, once you have that kind of severe internal weakness, it does not take long for external vultures to start circling. And this brilliantly illustrates how the weakened, overstretched Malian military was just completely surrounded. From the north, the Tuareg nomads swept in, capturing the crown jewel city of Timbuktu in 1433. Down south, the Mossi kingdoms relentlessly raided the vital agricultural heartlands with their cavalry. And over in the east, the rising Songhai Empire struck these devastating blows, conquering critical trade hubs like Jini in 1473. The Mali Empire was literally being systematically dismantled from 3 different directions all at once. Finally, Section 5, Gunpowder and the Final Collapse, the Final Blow. So in 1591, a Moroccan expeditionary force marched all the way across the Sahara and completely defeated the rival Songhai Empire. Suddenly, there was this massive power vacuum in the western Sudan. The ruler of Mali at the time, Mansa Musa IV, saw this chaos as a desperate, sort of final opportunity to rebuild his dying empire. So in 1599, he launched an attack to seize back the incredibly valuable city of Djenné. But at the Battle of Djenné, the mismatch was absolutely staggering. The crucial point here is that previous Mansas of Mali had actually tried to buy modern firearms from the Portuguese, but they totally failed. That meant Mali's outdated forces went into this war using the exact same methods they had used for centuries: traditional cavalry, iron spears, and composite bows. Meanwhile, the Moroccan and Songhai defenders were this modernized military machine equipped with arquebus firearms, cannons, and gunpowder. So you had traditional Malian cavalry marching straight into devastating modern Moroccan gunpowder. It was an absolute technological slaughter. Which brings us to the tragic final collapse. Not only were they completely outgunned, but treacherous Malian vassals actually deserted the campaign at Djenné right when the Mansa needed them the absolute most. Mansa Musa IV suffered a crippling defeat that permanently destroyed whatever royal prestige he had left. Shortly after that, marauding raiders came in and literally destroyed the historic capital of Nihani. By the time Musa died in 1610, the empire had vanished from the map. It splintered into tiny, completely insignificant fragments, divided up among his 3 sons. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. Is immense economic wealth ever enough to sustain a superpower without the strong, stable institutions needed to protect it? The Mali Empire had all the gold in the world, literally, but without clear succession laws, loyal governors, and military modernization, it all just rotted from the inside out before being crushed from the outside in. Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.